Dominic was born January 22nd, 1982, and it was the best gift I ever received. Love of my life, right there from the day one I met him. And he was born in Germany, and since he's African American and German, he used that nickname German Chocolate. So he was my German chocolate. He was a great guy, wonderful kid. Grew up in Germany for his first 10 years, spoke fluent German, and then we moved to the United States. I am a legal immigrant. I had to go through a lot of paperwork. I had to go through medical testing and affidavits. I had to have sponsors. I had to have money in my account. I had to sign paperwork that I could never ever receive welfare or any help, assistance from the government, even though I was married to a service member at that time. So we came over here, I did all that, and we came to the United States, and I applied to become an American citizen because I knew this was my home and I wanted to do it right. So it took me 5 years to become a citizen, and I got my little flag and I was sworn in, and I was told that I should be very proud because I wasn't born an American. I earned to be an American, and it still sticks with me. We moved to California, and Dominic and we were still always best friends, had a lot of fun. He went through school, 4.0 GPA, great student, great son. So then he started volunteering for the fire department in Riverside in Moreno Valley, California. And his love for helping his community, it was just in him. He's been like that since a little kid, sitting with the kids nobody else wanted to sit with. And then he decided, well, let me become a intern at the local TV station and an editor. But it wasn't enough action for him. He wanted more. So he applied for a position with the dispatch center, 911 dispatch center in Riverside, California, for the Riverside Sheriff's Department. And he became one of their best. And all the policemen, all the time when they were called out on a 911 call and Dominic was on the other line, they felt safe. They knew he would bring them home to their families. Life was good, and he wanted to become a motorcycle officer and then helicopter pilot for the police department. And it never happened. I was in Atlanta. I just arrived in Atlanta on July 12th, 2012. And Anthony and I, my fiancé, wonderful man I met 9 years ago, said, let's have breakfast. It's early in the morning before we go to my cousin's house. And we went to the Waffle House, and as we left there, everything in me crashed. I almost passed out. I collapsed. And Anthony was worried. He said, what's going on with you? What's wrong? It's not jet lag. I said, I don't know. I can't keep my eyes open. Something's wrong. So we went to his cousin's house. I laid down, and the phone rang constantly. And thank God I couldn't hear the voicemails because it was people calling me, telling me that Dominic had been killed. So the 5:45 in the morning when he got killed was when all energy left my body. It's that separation of mother and child. So I got all these messages, please call, and I'm thinking, oh goodness, he crashed, he's probably in a cast or something. And then I called dispatch, and I could tell in the voice of this young lady that was his friend and co-worker that she didn't want to tell me. And I said, tell me, where is he, what's going on? And she said, hold on, I'll get the chief. And then the chief came online, and then you hear those words, I'm so sorry to tell you, but Dominic got killed this morning. And we broke down, we lost it, we passed out. I know I screamed, but I kept saying, that can't be true. I just hugged him last night, just told him see you later at the airport. I kissed him. It can't be true, but it was. And then we came home immediately, and all his friends were waiting for us. And so the reality hit that I'm walking into an empty house. His room, I went straight to his room. I wanted to smell his pillow, his clothes. And I was still in disbelief. I said, this is probably one of his worst pranks. It's not true, but it was. And at first I didn't know who the perpetrator was. But we went through and I had to go see my son in the morgue. This was the last time I touched my child. His dead, cold hands with the bruises. And I got to touch him one more time. I got to kiss him one more time. We had services, and then Dominic and I had talked about burial, cremation, but it was about me. It wasn't about him. And we talked about, okay, cremation is easier because you can take the ashes. You're not stuck at a place with a graveyard. Now I had to make that decision, burial or cremation, and I had him cremated, and I have his ashes with me. And I have his ashes in my little locket, and that's all I wear. So that's all I have left of my child. And there's not a minute that I don't miss him. Now comes the realization, which I found out maybe a month into it, that the guy who killed my son was an illegal. He was from Guatemala. I will not say his name. I refuse. I don't give him that much. He was from Guatemala, had 2 felonies that were played down to a lesser charge. He was deported. Once he came back, he had a DUI, got probation, and then while he was on probation, was caught again driving drunk, and they gave him probation again. Riverside County. And 5 weeks later, he turned his truck in front of Dominic while he was on his way to work. Had my son dead on the sidewalk, where the first responders were his friends. They couldn't work it. They couldn't do this. The fire department came and they realized it was Dominic, their volunteer. They couldn't do it. They had to call highway patrol. I always tell people I can deal with an accident. Things happen. But it's not an accident when somebody that's not supposed to be in this country, has no right to be in this country, shouldn't be in this country after all he's done already, then takes out my child and receives a misdemeanor without gross negligence and gets 9 months and 5 years probation from a judge that told me face to face that if he would have known more, he would have given him a harsher sentence, but he promised, he made a promise. And that's the harsh reality, that now as a naturalized American, I am proud to be an American. I didn't drag my child over a border or through a desert. I made sure he was okay and protected him until that day. And it wasn't by an American, because people tell me that, well, it could have been an American. Sure, it could have been, but it wasn't. And an American criminal has a right to be here, sadly, but an illegal criminal doesn't. And that's the harshest reality, that this didn't have to happen. And because of somebody that ignored our laws, I'm now forever separated from my child, permanently separated. He was in jail 35 days. That's all he did. And after 35 days, they were going to let him go, but I was contacted by an ICE agent who heard the story, who was irate. He was just so angry, and he told me, I can't give you my name, but you need to look in Adelanto, in California, in the desert. He's being held there, and if you don't go, they might just let him out the back door. And so for a year and a half, Anthony and I went up to Adelanto in the desert, hour-and-a-half drive there, every week to make sure they knew I wasn't going away. You will pay for this one way or another. Finally, we got a call from the ICE agent that he's on his way, taking him to the airport to send him back to Guatemala. And good sources, because Dominic has friends everywhere in California, good sources telling me he's back.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm afraid that one day I would turn on the news and I'm going to see another mom crying and another child on a slab in the morgue and his face as the perpetrator.